Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome back to Insurance for the New Possible, a Chubb conversation. We are joined by Adrian Hill, the head of consumer propositions for Asia Pacific at Chubb, and Elijah Chun, an insurance practice leader. Sometimes I feel like I'm in the wrong room because the people I'm talking to are way too impressive. Anyway, it's great to have both of you here. Before we focus on the central part of our conversation today, let's get a bit of your backgrounds for some context. Elijah, let's start with you.
Much of my career has been in insurance, and I started out as an industry practitioner with a regional life insurance company.
Okay.
Before moving into the wonderful world of consulting in 2012.
Got it.
So for the past decade, I've had the privilege of working with my industry partners across life, health, and general insurance to build success stories for their organizations and for themselves.
Super duper.
So very happy to be here and
Awesome.
looking forward to having a very engaging dialogue with you gentlemen.
It's great to have you here. Adrian?
Hi, Adrian Hill. So I look after what we call consumer propositions at Chubb. It's an odd title, and I weirdly find myself in a similar role no matter where I work. Industries, I've worked in mobile industries, now insurance, but these kind of consumer roles where we're translating what the company is trying to do to the outside world, but mostly always with a digital lens, and I guess making sense of the insurance industry now and taking that to our partners is what we do here.
So are you a technologist at any level? Are you techno interested? In other words, you've done everything you said with a digital lens.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
I think just a genuine interest in complex things made simple, right? So I think when we look at the inside of any organization, from the people, the things that they do, the tasks they perform, how do you digitize that?
Yeah.
Right? And I think they're turned into microservices today, the task people perform, and how do you wrap those up and take those to business and partners in a more simple fashion? It just fascinates me how we do that.
So for me, my first experience with a computer really at scale was when I was trying to write a paper for one of my classes at college. And somebody had a Mac. It must have been a Mac 2E or something. And I was writing on a typewriter with whiteout. And it was very frustrating. And I remember saying to the guy, can I try that? And it had Microsoft Word on it or some word processing thing. And it was like an epiphany for me. And ever since then, I can't get away from it. Elijah, I'm really curious from your perspective, because you did work on the insurance company side and then on the consulting side. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. What's the difference for you, right? And you must feel like the experience that you had at the insurance company helps inform how you then help make those journeys, as you were talking about, so much better, right?
You're right to say we are both sides of the same coin.
Right.
And what connects us really is we are in a very exciting time where you're seeing so many changes, so many new business models, new technologies being implemented, than the many decades that came before. So I think this is essentially what connects us from being in the industry and being in consulting.
Do you feel the change? Do you know what I mean? Like, I know when I was working at Morgan Stanley and at Goldman Sachs, I felt there were moments where I thought, okay, wait, we're installing a token ring global connected network so that now I can send files to London. That's not an email. I just put them up on the network. Like, everything changed. Are we at that point now? Are we past that point? Like, what does it feel like to you?
I think right now we're living in an age where being digital is no longer new. It's no longer a differentiating advantage. And I think COVID has really quite a big part to play in accelerating that pace of development
Fair
that
enough.
I just was talking about.
Right.
So I believe at this point in time, being digital is expected of many companies, and this is what their customers are expecting of them. And it's a very interesting time to be in, because you see so much investment into new technologies, into building new customer experiences. So you're seeing companies moving away from the transactional into the experiential.
Right, but it's a big difference, isn't it?
It is.
In a way, it's kind of subtle, but it's also really large, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we sometimes forget to translate the expectations we have as a consumer into the workplace.
Right.
Say, well, hang on a minute. If I expect that myself, why wouldn't others too? How do I make that happen? Who do I need to ask? How do I change our culture or our organization to fixate around those experiences?
Right. Right, and if everything is moving to experiential, do you reference other experiences that you have that are outside of your industry and then try to bring them in? What do you think?
Definitely.
How so, though? Like, what are you thinking about when you think that's a great experience? We need to have that too.
So I guess many customers, their expectations are being shaped by what they experience in other industries, and they say, why can't I experience the same thing in insurance?
Right.
Why is it do I still have to fill in a pen and paper, a form just to purchase an insurance policy?
Right.
So I think definitely our experiences elsewhere does shape our expectations
Right.
as we engage with our insurers.
So do you think there are apps that people use or other experiences that they have that can then be translated into what you do, particularly in your role, right? If you're thinking about the way consumers are behaving, what they want, what are the kind of propositions that you think they're already using?
Well, when I think about the app itself, I think everyone's got that you need an app or a website or some access point. But
Yeah, that's a maybe though, right?
It's a hygiene factor, right? But I think behind it, the kind of the breakdown of what that app is, what it does, that almost taking that product management lens of it to say,
Right.
okay, how do internally, when Uber added that feature or that thing that you love, that didn't just come from one project to launch an app. That's an
Right.
ongoing investment in product management.
Right.
People that wake up every day, who's the CEO of that product inside the bigger app. They're one of many product managers that just fixate on that experience and add features and functionality, helping leadership, helping everyone around you say it's not a project to have an app. It's a product, right? It's living and it's breathing, and you've got to break it down.
Right. So we talk a lot about digital transformation in the insurance space, a ton, right? But it's not a destination. And I don't want to be so trite and say like it's a journey, not a destination, but it's really not a destination. We are kind of in this post-digital world, right? And I think, as you said, that COVID definitely helped accelerate this. But now that we're here, there has to be this persistent drive to be more digitally oriented, which you've been doing your whole lives, right, as well. What are we looking at? Like, what does that really mean going forward?
There's a behavioral change, right? If you do something enough times, it becomes a habit. And I think COVID forced that habit shift. I think you say if you do something 22 times, and I really must go to the gym 22 times, I think at some point in my life, other than just pay the subscription fee. But it was that shift that forced, and nobody knew how long that sort of period at home was going to be. But you had to pay the bill, or you had to do that, perform that task or that transaction.
Right.
And adoption came organically with that, rather than it being forced. It just organically came about. And I think therefore it allows companies to take a bit of a bolder move to shift channel behaviors, maybe reduce in-branch transactions or call-based transactions where there are heavy cost loadings,
Right.
to help consumers move to more of a digital world.
Right.
And I will agree with that, right? Because of COVID, the home has become the epicenter of a customer's universe.
It's weird, right?
So it's functioning as a school, a mall, an office, a supermarket.
Wait a second. Can I just repeat this for a second? Because I hadn't thought about it like this way before. It is functioning as an office and a school and a mall. And I didn't really think about it in those terms. But when you do think about it, right? Like if you have kids upstairs, it's like an arcade, right?
Yeah.
In the TV room, it's like a movie theater. Down over there, it's like where you pick up all your packages that you've ordered from Amazon or Shopee or Lazada.
Yeah.
And that's the mall part. And then mom and dad are maybe in the basement or in the side room doing their work. Wow, I hadn't thought about it like that before. Sorry, go ahead.
And so what has happened is that it has caused shifts, to your point, in customers' mindsets, expectations, behaviors.
Right.
And this has really generated a lot of new and more frequent customer digital footprints,
Go ahead.
which have, I believe, created opportunities for many industries. And those who are brave enough to take that leap, to capture the opportunities as they come.
I agree. Yeah. I want to talk about something that you mentioned a second ago. And both of you did actually. During COVID, we saw these behavioral changes. And I think in some cases, let's talk about companies that we know about, right? Netflix, Shopify, and other companies like that. You saw massive spikes in their usage and also big increases in their stock prices. And as COVID turns from a pandemic into an endemic, you've seen a lot of that fall off, both in the stock price and in the usage of those things. Netflix as well is going through big problems right now because of the way that people are backed off from all of that stuff, right? Because the home is now moving a little bit away from being all of those things, but more so than it used to be. What's happening in the insurance industry do you think that's going to keep that persisting? Because the digital transformation of insurance, as we talked, not a destination, right? It has to keep going. Is it being driven by the consumers that are buying the product, or is it being driven by the purveyors?
I think it's got to be a little bit of both. I think as you recognize opportunity and if we were looking previously before signs of revenue in order to double down on our investment, I think they've seen enough of a shift of behavioural change to say this is the trend now.
Yeah.
It's a hygiene factor to go to that next step. Now.
What do you mean by a hygiene factor?
It's just a default position. It's my kids expect Wi-Fi
So it's
no
like
matter
brushing
where
your
they
teeth.
are the
It's
world.
like brushing your teeth every
Brushing
day
your
kind of
teeth.
thing.
It's got to
Got it.
be there.
Okay.
My kids are thinking, where's the Wi-Fi
Yeah, where's
code?
the Wi-Fi?
Where am I at? Why doesn't this thing work?
Right.
As we travel around, it's an expectation. So always connected, and I think as it evolves, right, there are no dead ends, right? This digital cycle, things will join up, these ecosystems create, whereas each company was looking at them in isolation. There's now opportunity to join forces and collaborate more and more so.
So what does collaboration look like from your perspective? Do you know what I mean? You're sitting there with this 35,000 point view of the whole industry and thinking, they're doing something great. This is a new thing. How do we get those two things together?
I think it's all about putting the customer at the front and center of your business.
Go ahead.
And that is the glue that joins different industries and the ecosystem, which basically brings the ecosystem together.
Right.
So I do think going forward, we will see digital ecosystems coming into prominence because of that.
Got it. What do you think about this idea? So I have this philosophy, right? No one succeeds alone. No matter how big you are or how strong you are, you always need great partners.
Yeah.
How do you look at this partnership perspective?
It's everything for us. We're in a partnership business. We have great products and propositions that we want to take to the masses through our partnership. So with banks, e-wallets, ride-hailing companies, this is how we find access to the market. And partnerships are more than just a vendor-supplier relationship for us.
They can't be, can they?
They have to find
They
the right.
cannot be.
We have to find the symbiosis between what we do and what our partner does. Our Grab ride cover, I think, is a really good example
It's a killer
of that.
example of this.
Finding the symbiosis between the customer pain point. You know, I booked my ride and it's more than 10 minutes late. For 30 cents subscription, you can have an immediate credit of $5 straight into your Grab wallet. And customers are subscribing to this in an episodic nature. So every time I ride, I've got this protection in place. And if something were to happen to me, I'm protected too. Customers like that, the claim is the proposition. That comes about through, as I say, symbiosis, finding the synergies between what Grab do and what Chubb do, and really harmonizing those two things together.
And I completely agree with that. It's about aligning yourself to the customer's lifestyle. And the customer doesn't think in terms of industry.
But just think, can I just interrupt you for a second? Just think about what all the things you've said up until now. When you were working in the insurance industry, lifestyle, mall, the home has become a different place. Did you think when you first started that this is what it would turn into?
No.
No way though, right? But that's why it's so cool. That's why this transition period is so good.
I was going to say, I think some of it's forced and then other parts of it are organic, right? And it's, any company's got to put the basic layers in place, the foundations, right, to create the environment to build from. And I think over time, we're just able to add those layers and have richer propositions, richer experiences, learnings from the prior layers, right? And I always think about it as layers. And I think when you look at a project, you always think I've got to deliver all layers, right? This time-based, cost-based delivery, it's got
Such
an
a good
end point.
Yep.
Whereas, again, I'm a huge champion of product management. I think people should be at the top of our organization. They represent the customer and they're able to cut through the business with that same ongoing desire to fix those customer problems, and they just need all the people behind them to do it. So adding these layers, adding features, functionality, retiring product or introducing new, I think it just allows us to do that on a more frequent basis.
I think we also have to challenge the definition of what a product is. And it should be aligned to the needs of the customer at different times of his life stage, as opposed to being looking at it from more of a product perspective, and pushing this out to the market.
Yeah, I think
relevant.
we've fallen into the traps before of having mass products, large, broad products that could appeal to everyone. And through those layers, we're now able to narrow them in and bring them and make them more specific. And data's helping us understand those specific pain points more and more and be more targeted.
I was going to say, do you think technology and data actually allows us to do this in a way that's better?
Yeah, I definitely think so, and I believe so. I envisaged the insurance product evolving, and it will involve the very intricate interplay between technology and data. I can almost imagine, with new technologies coming to the fold, with new developments happening in the industry, especially with the metaverse being something that's going to be quite real, and I do expect it to become mainstream in the coming years. Insurance companies have to really rethink their online presence.
Go ahead.
How is it they connect with their customers? And also, how is it they can offer their customers more choice, more autonomy to make very informed decisions on the types of products and the level of products that they require? And all this requires data. Yeah. And being able to make sense of the insights that are generated from it. And also the insights that are derived from the customer's interaction with data. I think it's going to be very interesting space for companies to be looking at.
How do you think the customers will interact with data? That's super interesting for me.
So at this point in time, I see it panning out over different time horizons, right? So more immediately, customers want to take control of their digital lives.
Absolutely.
And I think this is something as insurers we've got to give it to them. And that means finding ways to empower them, essentially to influence the premiums through their behaviors and their actions.
Go ahead.
So that's the more immediate thing. You're already seeing all these things happening with health engagement platforms that insurance companies offer. Going forward, I do think there would be a need to offer them tools, devices, where they are empowered to co-create with the insurer the experiences they want. So, for instance, if you are able to supply a customer with data,
right,
and he can use it to, he can play around with it and to create insights with it, to draw his own conclusions on the types of products and services that he requires, I think that would be very powerful.
So this is actually super interesting. When most companies talk about data access, data analysis, and then applying technology to that, I always think about them using it for themselves to then almost unilaterally supply new products to customers. But this idea of customers having access to data as well, and then being able to use that data to co-create is super interesting, no?
I think it is. And with Web3, I think this is where information and data gets more democratized.
Go ahead.
And customers are owning, their spaces on the internet. So yes, I do see that as just my personal view, as the future.
Do we want to have a Web3 conversation? Not really. I'm just, the reason why I say this is I don't want to get too deeply down the metaverse rabbit hole, but I know that big companies like yours are believers in this, that they believe that there's a space out there where the interactions can be more immersive, can be more collaborative. And if you look at the progression of the way technology has changed the way we interact with each other, Web3 is really just the next step. We can call it whatever we want. But if it becomes more immersive, then this ability to co-create should become more powerful, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I think it's companies being bold and brave enough to decouple themselves from that. This is my customer. This is my data. This is you stay in my environment. And open banking APIs, open insurance APIs puts really the empowerment to the customer to say, I'm going to choose where I consume my banking information, where I consume my insurance information. I choose the app which gives me the best experience instead of having to have one app for every single one of where I've got an account, a savings and investments. And insurance, I mean, it's a huge opportunity for us to finally give the customer a single view of their coverage level. Imagine being able to log in somewhere and see everything that you have in one place that gives you context of, am I covered enough? Am I not covered enough? And the opportunity to do something about that. And
it's interesting you mentioned that because I have the perfect example for you. Have you heard of SG Findex?
No.
Okay, so it's an open finance initiative that's championed by the Singapore government.
This is the sandbox, API sandbox for MAS?
What it essentially is a common API marketplace that allows banks, insurance companies, government agencies, as well as the Singapore Stock Exchange to come together to share common customer data. And this was launched actually with the objective of allowing the customer to make better and more informed decisions with regard to his financial and retirement planning, right? And to your point, with something like this, the customer is able to have a 360 view of his personal balance sheet, all his insurance coverage, everything in one place. And I think once this goes live and it's fully operational, it's going to be a really exciting space to watch. And personally, I'm very proud to be Singaporean because this is first of its kind in the world.
Yeah.
And I don't think at this point in time we've seen anything of such scale and such a size anywhere else.
We've got the technology; it's sitting right there. It's almost putting those APIs out publicly to say, go consume this and do stuff with it. I mean, the examples Elijah gave are the extreme of that, where a customer's actually doing something with their data, co-creating with that.
Exactly.
But even in the first instance, other third parties having access to that and aggregating a single view of your financial world, and just putting experience at the forefront rather than containing me to the app where I bought that product or service in the first place.
Do you think we get to the point where literally individuals can create their own products and propose them to,
Absolutely,
for cover, right? I want to be covered for this, and I'm usually doing this type of behavior, and I'm traveling or whatever it is that I have, and I then submit that in a way to you and say, and I can afford to pay this kind of thing, so I can set all my own parameters, and that technology then would allow you through the open APIs to say, oh, we can do that. Does that happen, or can it happen? I mean.
I think it has to.
I think, yeah, that's.
Well, I think there's so much hidden. A lot of people have more insurance coverages than they know of. We've got a credit card in our pocket, I'm sure, and I bet you couldn't tell me exactly what the travel cover it comes with, or
I think I have it.
Purchase protection.
Yeah.
We want to bring those what are typically known as no additional charge products. Banks pay for them to draw you in, and they sit there. And I think we need to bring and empower the customer. Say, did you know you had this?
Right.
We know you just bought a flight with Singapore Airlines. Did you know you got this level of cover? It might not be fully sufficient for you and your family to travel, and we want you to know about that so you can top it up. But there are opportunities there to cross-sell, to really use that as a contextual point of reference.
Do you feel like some of the services that big companies are offering are getting abstracted away from the companies? So building all of this technology that then enables this interaction between the people that are consuming them, not just the consumers, right? But there's a B2B aspect to this as well. And the companies that can create them, right? Because I can get access to my own data, but I can't create products that you can create. Mm-hmm. So is that being abstracted away? This idea of I can propose something, but only you can create it kind of thing.
I think within insurance, it's already being practiced. I think it's probably more of extending the idea. So for instance, in the case of the symbiosis you were mentioning about, Adrian, between banks and insurance companies, I think there's a natural partnership there. If I were to take on a bank mortgage, then naturally I would need maybe a mortgage reducing term to cover me for the risk that I'm being exposed to. And I think going forward with the ecosystems rising in prominence, I think there's more opportunities for collaboration, cross-industry product bundling to create something that is more integrated, right, to the lifestyle of the customer, where he doesn't need to think, I get my insurance from here and I get my banking mortgage from here. Right. It's going to be quite an integrated experience going forward. And I think this is an opportunity for companies to work together to bring about the experience.
We talk about partnerships in one-to-one nature, but the triangle is the strongest shape, right? I can't help but think we could just add one more party, and from here we start to build these ecosystems. Exactly. That's where it's got to go. So I think the issue for a lot of guys is that it's intangible. These ecosystems, right? The metaverse, you can't quite touch and see it. It's a bit
not yet, but yeah,
not yet, right? Not yet. Right. But four-dimensional, virtual reality. Everything's going to come to life, and I think it's helping people understand the tangibility of what an ecosystem means, and my policy sitting on a ledger somewhere opposed to as a PDF in my email inbox, right? It's that step change that's going to happen. Whether we're able to lead the charge on that, we're definitely going to put our hat on the table for that one, right? But it's our job is partnership business.
Right now, I give away all my data for free. Like, for instance, I go to a hospital, right? You talked about, and I love this idea of not having to fill out my forms every single time I go to the same place, right? If I go to hospital A, I have to fill out a form. If I go to hospital B, I have to fill out the same form. that should be open. If I self-sovereign and own my own data, I just naturally have a way to give it to them. But I don't want to give them all my data unless they pay me for it, because they take it and then use it for something else. Go ahead.
I think at this point in time, when we talk about open finance, open insurance, there is data sovereignty on the part of the customer because he owns the data.
Go ahead.
And the data cannot be shared until and unless he gives explicit consent to the various parties to exchange the data that's pertaining to himself.
Right.
So I do think being paid or being remunerated for the use for the use of my data could take many forms. It could be monetary in nature, as you mentioned, but I don't think we are getting to that point yet.
Okay.
But it could be quid pro quo or in exchange for certain perquisites. So in a recent survey that we did, probably 1.5, 2 years back, the consumers we spoke to actually told us that they would be willing to exchange their data for certain perquisites, such as value-added services, and even insights about themselves, or even they're quite happy to be sharing their data for preferential pricing as well.
Okay.
So I think that's one way of being remunerated, and it has to present a certain benefit for the customer
Right.
to want to be able to share information about himself to a third party.
Got it.
I agree. I think if a customer can see the immediate benefit of giving you just that bit extra,
Right.
and look, there are all sorts of devices in play to gamify, complete your profile with us, But I think the consumer was very aware it was about just so you can market to me.
At some point,
I think when they see the benefit of that more relevant marketing, right? And there was even the immediate thought of, the big brother. Well, God, I was just talking about that the other day, and here this is here, and it's like, well, isn't that a good thing? Clearly it's something you're interested in.
Right.
So there's that trust element of this as well. The monetization may be a stretch too far. Maybe younger generations may see more equity in their data. I don't know.
Right.
But I think if you want to access a product or service, there's a default position that that you have to give away certain information.
So if you're thinking about these more immersive partnerships, and if you're thinking about co-collaboration or collaboration and co-creation, how do you make sure that there is trust there, right? Because if I don't give you full disclosure, you can't then help create with me, right? It's when I really trust you, or when you really trust me, we put all our cards on the table. We can say, if we put these three things together, we're going to get the best result. How do you engender that trust?
I think it's a Maslow's hierarchy. Right? At the bottom, you really have to convince the customer that his data is secure. So that's where I think with greater openness and data exchanges across industries, is where you see more investment going into, strengthening their security.
Right.
And I think that's fundamental, and that's hygiene.
Right. That's hygiene. Yeah, exactly.
I think we're looking more. Our digital channel of distribution for the insurances are playing on the convenience factor. We're not asking for any data incrementally to that you've already shared with our partners.
Fair
We're
enough.
simply allowing you access to product where previously you would have to go and seek it out, right? And developing specific propositions that are very convenient for you to purchase with a bit of sustainability, so you're protected for a good period of time. But they're very relevant to the journeys that you're performing. You may be in a bank and applying for a credit card or a personal loan or paying a utility bill. We've got specific propositions for you, micro-insurance propositions. As a flick of a switch or an opt-in, you're protected, right? That would have taken before a conversation with a broker about a product you probably never thought about because it didn't have the context. So the digital transactions are giving the context. We're bringing convenience, and we're not asking for any incremental data.
When you look at that triangle you were talking about as the strongest shape, right? And you think about the ideal partnership for you, if you could just back up for a second and say, when I try to initiate a new partnership, I always run into problem A, B, and C. I'm curious what those are. If the time to solution is shorter, it gets shorter and shorter now, and if you could just remove them, what would a perfect partnership look like to you?
It's a great question. It's definitely that a lot of our partners have been, and some still going through the digital transformation, legacy IT infrastructure, legacy cultures, legacy mindsets, right? It exists. So, new companies who are built ground up on a suite of microservices,
right?
They're truly agile in the ability that they're able to plug this to that, and craft services that develop propositions in an app. They're able to test and experiment and learn very quickly. They have the appetite to do so. And they understand there are trade-offs. So they may trade off certain elements of their proposition for an incremental fee income from an insurance product, but able to see the bigger picture and the opportunities that exist there. That's exciting for us. The partners that are really, truly agile, both at the information architecture level, but also culturally and willing to experiment.
I didn't anticipate talking about Maslow's hierarchy, nor did I anticipate talking about microservices.
A lot of triangles today.
It was really, really good, actually. But I want to ask this as well. If you're getting into one of these partnerships, do you feel like it's becoming easier, and that because all of these companies are also going through their own digital transformation, that when you come in with what seems like a perfect partnership to you, right, or from your perspective, internally like, oh, this may not work because they're not there yet, as opposed to they don't want to do it. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. I think through the conversation with our partners early on through to deciding on what we're going to launch first, there's the appetite and readiness to do it. We've built out a platform, an InsurTech platform within Chubb called Chubb Studio that really helps them get there a lot quicker. SDKs, prepackaged APIs, propositions, experiences, just to help them break the barriers of resource constraints, code access, testing cycles,
right.
So we can get there, right? Yeah. Make the case proven within their business, and then start to develop a more persistent plan.
I think about it like this: in the old days, right? Morgan Stanley had email before a lot of our clients did. So if I said to one of them, "Hey, let me just send you an email," they would just say, "Can I fax it to you instead?" And it didn't make any sense to me until much later when I thought, well, maybe they just don't have it yet. Yeah. And that's kind of what I was pointing towards, right? Like, they're not as far advanced as you are, so they have to say no until they get there.
Sure. Yeah, that's right. We have partners at varying degrees of maturity digitally,
right?
But equally, we've still got channels of choice of customers, call centers and branches, and there are other touch points where insurance still distributes. But digitally, different levels of maturity.
I think a partnership is just like a marriage, and both of you complement each other. So one party may be less digitally mature,
right?
But if the other party, as you mentioned, has something that they can bring to the table that could accelerate the digital journey of the other party.
Right.
So I think something like Chubb Studio is fantastic because it allows your partners to just plug and play, onboard their products almost very seamlessly, and then to start distributing the next day. So I do think that's how a partnership should be working.
I agree. And I think that we've reached a point now. There's so many inflection points taking place right now in the world of technology, in the world of insurance, in the world of open banking. And I feel like companies are starting to understand that when they go to make partnerships with other companies, that they have similar challenges and that there is this little bit of a mismatch. And I think about marriage the same way, right? It's like this oscillation between like who's further ahead than not. But at the end of the day, as long as you meet again, that's a great partnership, right? So there are times where it's this for somebody and this for the other person. And as long as they're meeting, that's okay. Yeah.
And you're a team. You're basically working together to get a win-win kind of an outcome.
Right.
Your partner will present, wider catchment, allow you to align to the lifestyle of your customers, more seamlessly. And you may have, the necessary products and services to kind of complement what your partner has to his customer.
I think the other thing that gets forgotten is there's a lot of talk about the technology, the products, the pricing. The reality is there's a team of people that are behind that. And the partnership is really, once the deals are signed and the suits walk away from the table, right? What's left is a great bunch of people operationally plugging these two things together. And look, we've got great tools to make that easier and quicker, but it's the people that do it. And every time I look at just the extent of the design teams, the development and the technology, but the people that are doing it, that's really where the partnership exists. And it's our job when we're talking to partners up front, and I call it the sniff test or kick tires, and they're doing the same with us, vice versa. It's great to meet people.
Sure.
But passionate people who care about the same things, and the teams that sit behind that front line of business development or partnership management, bring them to the table and get each other to talk. That's what excites us.
Yeah.
Working with people at a ground level.
At the end of the day, really, it is about the other people. Yeah. No. Do we see other mega trends, other massive things happening that are creating inflection points that are changing the way we look at industry, but also the way we look at insurance?
There are
climate change comes to mind, right? But
yeah, that's
stuff
exactly
like that.
what I was about to talk about. So I think there are going forward going to be several waves of change, and it's something that's coming fast and furious, and I think companies just need to make sure they strengthen their digital cores, get their fundamentals right to ride those waves when they come.
And what are those?
Climate change.
Right.
They focus on ESG.
Yeah.
Many companies will need to comply with the sustainability, guidelines, right? And we're seeing this presenting an excellent opportunity for insurers to innovate. Because to be ESG compliant, to be able to report correctly,
right,
you need to develop digital solutions. You need to improve on your data availability.
Yep.
And all these things give you a very good reason to try to accelerate some of your business goals and transformation goals as well.
So we're talked about data, new technology, new business models, and now this other wave of climate change and ESG appropriation into all industry, not just insurance. Does this also drive new product creation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All of those things give us that opportunity.
Because the data is key for this.
The data is key. Third-party data, all of those cultural or environmental things that are changing have data points on them.
Absolutely.
And if you can leverage those to create propositions, it's exciting because they create more frequent engagement propositions opposed to your normal I buy, service and claim. Imagine logging into this aggregated account we talked about earlier, where I see my insurance policies, and instead of just seeing a list of PDFs, right, you're seeing this living, breathing balance of premium and claim payouts because the fog index hit a certain level, unemployment rate, and so you got this parametric-based, probability-based environment of data feeding a policy that you bought that you have no control over. It doesn't impact you or the goods that you buy directly, but the environment you're within.
Yeah, so go ahead.
I completely agree that ESG really gives us an opportunity to reimagine how products and services can be developed, and also kind of experiences we can give to our customers, our employees, as well as our distributors as insurers. So I think it's a game changer, right, for those who are brave enough to take that plunge.
Yeah, we were looking for partners that have the same passion and want to take those products to market, test and trial them. They're very new, very innovative, and they need the data and they need the touch point to do that with.
And I see it as, it's going to be inevitable that in the next couple of years, you'll see more ESG-powered products hitting the market. And that's where you see a whole wave of innovation, product innovation, service innovation that's going to be out there. And it's going to be a very exciting space to watch when that happens.
I want to talk about this wallet thing for a second, right? Because you've reminded me of something. I saw the transformation in what I'll call traditional financial services industries, right? So if I had some stocks being held at broker A, some stocks being held at broker B, I could then buy an external third-party application, feed all of that stuff in through an API in real time, and then see what my market exposure was through fixed income, equities, futures, commodities, and I could see it myself without having to ask 5 different brokers for information in PDFs and then build an Excel spreadsheet to try to do some analysis. Is this what you're suggesting as well?
That's exactly
so I can have other inputs into it in real time to figure that stuff out. That would be kind of cool, in the insurance space for sure. And then dovetail with my other stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
It's empowerment. It's giving the customer choice of the experience I want to consume. I could be in my Grab app and aggregate these things.
Right.
It's on the insurance, it's on the financial industry to share this information publicly and be confident that, of course, they're looking for a way to get a return on that exposure.
Sure.
But that context, and I always look it back at, Chubb and my employer give me an insurance policy, a life insurance. I have medical insurance,
Right.
dental insurance,
Right.
and then there's stuff that I want to buy personally. But I've got no context of the two things. And
Right, you
the
can't-
surveys we perform will often tell us, well, I think I've got that. I think I've got travel insurance, so I'll be okay. And there's that mistrust. But what if that credit card free travel product you had existed on the same balance as your life, your health, your dental? But then you saw glaring gaps in your lifestyle products, your
Right.
coverage of
Right.
your cyber, your the exposures that you have. It gives you context.
You could
And
add
that's
them
what's
in, then
missing
you could
today.
add them in.
You add them on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Was it you or was it you that mentioned parametric insurance? But I mean, this is a real big change we have because of technology, right? I can now access real-time data, synthesize that real-time data, and then create products that are based on it. And as soon as that trigger happens, as soon as X happens, right, I've written into my parametric product, I then get a payout that's automatic.
Yeah.
This is a game changer as well.
It's
no?
a game changer. Our ride cover products, as I mentioned, is parametric based. The claim is the proposition, and at that point, the parametric has to empower that. But I think we can all imagine or have experience being in an airport and that dreaded news of flight delayed.
You just
come
sit
up.
there and you're just like,
And what do I do?
do I do?
I've got this insurance in place. It's doing nothing for me potentially, but it can, and it does now. Chubb have parametric-based flight delay insurance that could potentially pay you immediately either money. I'm sorry to hear this has happened. We've put this money in your account. Here's access to the lounge. Here's a QR code. Go and spend $10 at Starbucks.
Right.
Just enriching that bad part of the experience.
I mean, you mentioned experiential experiences earlier, right? So I imagine a situation like this. And let's move back to other places where we use apps or we use technology to do things, right? I go onto Amazon and I buy a product or anything that's online, yeah? And it says, if you bought this, you should buy this because other people, they'd make a recommendation to it, right? So think about you're in an airport as well. Your flight gets canceled. Your cover knows it. And even if they don't cover all of the cost of it, just getting that payout, I call this like para-indemnity insurance, right? You get a little bit of a payout and you're like, okay, now I feel comfortable and now I can handle things. This is the type of experience that I see coming more and more. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I would go one step further to say that why stop there? Why not book me a Grab to take me home if my flight gets cancelled?
Absolutely.
And I think that would totally blow my mind as a customer.
There's the triangle, right? It's Chubb, it's Grab, Singapore Airlines, right? And you come together to understand those are the people I was interacting with, or Changi Airport. These are the things that happen, but there's optionality, or throw a hotel into the mix. And suddenly this ecosystem, you throw everything in the mix, either third parties or our partners are co-creating these products because they think they know what the customer pain points are.
Exactly.
I think that's the perfect way to end on the triangle, the power of the triangle. Thank you both for doing this. Adrian Hill, Elijah Chan, that was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.